Next thing I know, they were standing over me asking me if I was okay. And I had no idea where I was. When I finally realized what was going on, I was like, is it over? And they're like, nope, we got the other side. I was like, awesome.
Do you have a thing that like helps you transition from professional life to dad, husband?
I have this thing implanted in my brain, so my work self does not know about my Audi. No. If you've watched Severance, that sometimes feels like an appealing option when you're going home to so you forget about everything that just happened during your work day.
Welcome to the Advisor Dads podcast, where family, finance, and real life collide. We're two financial advisors and full time dads sharing stories, lessons, and strategies to help you make smarter decisions for your family and your future. Whether you're navigating retirement, raising kids, or just trying to make sense of the financial world, we've got you covered. Ben Tusky is a private wealth advisor and the vice president of financial planning at Sunpoint Investments. Dave Rath is a wealth advisor and the chief investment officer at Continuum Wealth Advisors. The views shared in this podcast are our own and don't necessarily reflect those of Sunpoint Investments or Continuum Wealth Advisors. Seriously, don't make financial decisions just because two dads with a microphone sound convincing. Talk to a professional that knows your situation. Some securities or strategies discussed may be holdings or recommendations for clients of Sunpoint Investments or Continuum Wealth Advisors. All right, let's get into it.
We are going to be talking today about the recent market volatility and how it affects our personal lives. Most importantly, how it affects us being dads and fathers and husbands and everything else that goes along with being home outside of our day job. And then we'll also talk about the balance that we have to strike when we are teaching our children a game, a skill, and the importance of the failure that's going to come into that, and do you let them win? So Ben Tusky is here, my co-host. Ben, how's everything going?
We're fresh off of Easter, busy weekend. I don't know. I feel like the jersey selection today was Cal Ripken, Iron Man. That's how I felt these past 2 weeks. Is I felt like Iron Man just pushing through at this point. But how are you doing? Coming not fresh off the procedure, but somewhat kind of fresh off the procedure.
Well, you feel like Iron Man. I don't know what I feel like because you've been through it. A lot of people in our situations have been through it. And funny story. So just to update everybody, I did just get a vasectomy. Was 3 weeks ago now, and I'm pretty free and clear of the side effects. But during the procedure, you're not sedated. I think you can be fully sedated. It's like an option. I wasn't given that option. I was feeling okay, but I hadn't eaten in 18 hours because they told me not to eat 6 hours beforehand, and my appointment was at 11. I started feeling lightheaded, asked for a drink of water, felt more lightheaded, and next thing I know, they were standing over me asking me if I was okay. And I had no idea where I was. When I finally realized what was going on, I was like, is it over? And they're like, nope, we got the other side. I was like, awesome. So that was my experience. The recovery was luckily pretty good. I didn't do the bag of peas. I was not in that much pain. And bag of peas, I think, is the choice for most guys. But I was not in that much pain where I needed to resort to that. Watched a few episodes of Netflix, but then this leads into our conversation today. I had to deal with what was going on in the market. So I was, the day after my procedure, doing stuff for our clients, responding to emails, doing stuff in the portfolios. It was not a very fun time to be me because I was dealing with the procedure, after effects, and then also the market. So what we're going to talk about today is how do we balance our work lives with the home life, especially when markets start to go a little crazy. So Ben, how are you doing on the home front with all the stuff that's going on in the market and the economy?
Yeah, the hard part is like even as advisors, I mean, you look at obviously the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks with the tariff situation, and you're always trying to like disconnect what is happening personally with what's going on in the economy, especially what we're coaching our clients to like try to eke out some of the noise and let's see how this is going to transpire. But I think on the personal side, it starts to put you on the defensive to say, Mary Kate and I've had this conversation already of like, I don't, I don't know what's going to happen here. She works as an ER nurse. Your hours aren't going to get cut. People are still going to get sick. They're going to need to go to the hospital. They're going to need to like be in the emergency room. But like, we should be prepared for things to be more expensive. We should start to create some slack in our budget and maybe cut back on the things that we were planning on doing this summer a little bit. And I think that's more of the conversations that I've been having with clients as they've reached out. Remember, a lot of my clients that I work with are under the age of 45, 50, so they're still in their prime working years and not depending on portfolios as much. However, there has been some angst around, what happens if we start to see a stagflation situation where inflation starts to creep up, growth rates either stay the same or actually go down. Maybe we see unemployment start to creep up. Again, these are all what if situations. So I feel like I'm fielding those questions professionally. I'm also fielding them personally. Of course, family and friends always find a way to like wiggle that into the Easter conversation with you, and which is totally fine. But personally, I'm definitely feeling a little bit more of the anxiety of like, how is this actually going to affect our day-to-day life as our family continues to live and go and do other experiences.
And as advisors in our profession, I feel like the hard work comes in spurts. And when it comes, it's going to be very fast and furious. And so you're you're not on autopilot for the rest of the year. You're still doing hard work, but now you're dealing with people's emotions. You're dealing with the stress of seeing clients' portfolios go down. And my challenge is always to turn that off when I go home and be present for my wife, be present for my kids. And I don't do a great job of it sometimes. I can be testy, and lack of sleep it will make any man a coward. And so that is something that I have to consciously fight against when I'm in front of my family, because it's so easy just to retire to a different room and
Yeah.
pour yourself a glass of scotch and forget about everything that just happened during the day. But we don't have that luxury if we want to be good fathers and husbands, right?
Yeah, what's your go-to? Because it's not a light switch, right? You can't just be like, okay, I'm gonna walk in the door. For me, it's like I can't just walk down those steps and just flip it off. Do you have a thing that like helps you transition from professional life to dad, husband?
I have this thing implanted in my brain so my work self does not know about my Audi. No. If you've watched Severance, that sometimes
Yeah.
feels like an appealing option when you're going home to so you forget about everything that just happened during your work day. But that's a good question. I don't. I try to remind myself that I am now present for my family. And as much as I try, though, I still have thoughts from work creep back into my mind. And
Yeah.
I have to just constantly bring myself back to that present moment. But I'm still a human being. I still make mistakes and will let that seep into my personal life. When you asked, do I have a preference? I thought you meant the scotch that I poured, but I don't do that unless it's a weekend and it's like a Friday night we're watching a movie. But yeah, it's tough, and I know some people go to the gym. I usually work out in the morning, breathing exercises. Again, that's more if I'm not around my kids. Like if I'm sitting on the couch with my kids, they're jumping all over me. I'm not really doing
Yeah.
any sort of breathing exercises. So I'm all ears if you have some good feedback for me on that.
I don't. This is an area where I think the work from home there's even bigger challenges because there is, in my day, no real, I don't get the drive home to decompress. Or, a lot of those times I would always talk to Pat, who obviously, you guys work together now, of like striking this balance between using that time home for the drive home for productivity versus decompression. And striking that balance, I felt like it was almost impossible because it's like, okay, I'm in the car for 20 minutes on the way home. I could be listening to, him and I always talked about Bloomberg surveillance. We really liked just getting outside perspective on markets and economic news. But there was times where I would get on the car on the way home, like, all right, I know I need, like, that was a total crap day, especially during the start of COVID, was like every advisor wanted to feel like wring my neck as their phone rang, which I understandably so. Now that I'm on the other side of the equation, I get it. But I wouldn't do anything. I would just try to listen and not this like super uppity music. I have this like chill folder. It's called chill on my Spotify. I just feel like it's like happier, not like crazy rap or rock music. And I feel like that time between going from work to home would help me with that transition. Now that I work from home fully, it is a little bit more challenging to just go down the steps and immediately be dad because I know I'm walking directly into responsibility versus a 20 minutes of like me time to do whatever I want in the car while I drive home. So I don't have any good advice there. I still probably struggle with that myself.
Well, I typically pick up my son from daycare and he's in the car ride for me on the way home. And so that me time or that unwind time is typically listening to whatever cartoon movie soundtrack is the flavor of the week. Right now it is the Plankton movie from SpongeBob SquarePants. I have that on repeat in my head and my car
Jeez.
all day long. So it is tough, and like you mentioned, you're just going basically from your office, which is your wherever you are in your house, your basement, your bedroom, and you're just going right into those responsibilities. So you don't have that unwind time. And is I wish we had more like to give our listeners. If we have people out there that are looking for some sage advice, I don't know other than trying to be present. And that's the only thing I could say is I will like have to physically tell myself in my brain that I am now in front of my children. I'm now talking to my wife. I need to get all business related stuff out of my head. And every time it creeps back in, I have to remind myself to get it out of there.
Yeah, I think it is somewhat like an impossible task. Sometimes you do bring your work home. I think everybody is guilty of it. I guess maybe the one thing that I probably don't give any credit because I didn't even mention it is typically the dogs need to be walked immediately after like I finish my work day. So if my wife's home and she's already got the kids from school and like Avery's off the bus and stuff, I have to take the dogs for a walk. And usually that's like I'll listen to music as I walk the dogs. And I probably don't give that enough credit for what that does for like me mentally to go do that, even though it's 10 minutes of just fresh air, walking around, no responsibility, and try not to think about anything really. Then I walk back in, it's like, okay. Then it's, of course, it's like WrestleMania, getting hit with a lacrosse stick, a bat, somebody's throwing a ball at me. But I think that like finding something that works for you to create that separation in your day. And if your drive is short to pick up your son from school, it's not a lot you could do in that if it's only a few minutes.
Yeah. Well, walking is always a good option, especially now in the Northeast that the sun is finally coming out and the temperatures are above freezing. It's good to get out there,
Yeah,
connect with nature, connect with your dogs. Dogs are a great a great therapy tool. You
yeah,
can just kind of sit and pet them. Like that's one thing I always do is connect with him and give him some attention, which also allows me to unload some stress. So um, we just also had to make things even more complicated. We just had spring break, and did you go anywhere with your family during that spring break period?
no. So because my daughter and son are at two different schools, like James goes to a Catholic school and Avery goes to a public school. James is like pre-K three, so like it's not. It's just like kindergarten, or it's just like a daycare. But during the spring break thing, we didn't go anywhere. We really had no aspirations to, but we did start to field the question this year that Avery came home and she was off a week and a day. And I guess a lot of people at her school had talked about their plans for spring break. I actually think it was like a exercise at school that they were like getting up in front of the class and talking about. And she went to a camp for 2 days last week because we won it in a raffle. So, and it's right up the street. But other than that, we had no plans. And my wife had said to me, like, do we feel like it's kind of lame that, like, it's spring break and we're just here? And I don't, it's this weird, like, yeah, it's spring break for them, but like, we still have work. And unless we're going to take the whole week off and go somewhere, and that goes back to like what we were talking about before, in this environment, it just feels like with this unknown situation, should we be forking out money to potentially get on a plane and go fly somewhere or even drive somewhere? I do think that there's something we will do next year.
And all the airlines and hotels are very helpful to lower the price for people going on spring break. Listen, I get it. I am a capitalist. And if you want to make your money, well, you want to make hay while the sun is shining. But yeah, it's an added pressure from a cost perspective going on spring break when everybody else is. And so I we did not go anywhere either. And my wife said the same thing. She's like, I feel like such a loser. We're just sitting at home, which we had our oldest. He was home from kindergarten, or from first grade for the whole week. And so we juggled duties as far as who was going to watch him. And
Yeah.
so I am dealing with the vasectomy post op. I am dealing with the market. I'm dealing with my son home from school. She was away on business for a day, so I had to watch both the kids. Basically, had to take the day off, which is fine.
Yeah.
But it's a lot. It's a lot of stuff on my plate, and the market is not playing nice and making my life easier.
Yeah, that was, I mean, that was the other thing I brought up to Mary Kate was just like, had we had plans for this spring break, I would have had to work the whole time. Like I don't travel, I don't go anywhere without my laptop, but I would have been on the phone or client emails, phone calls most of the time. So it actually was better that we didn't this year. But I just also like I get the craze or like, hey, we want to do this because the kids are off. You're right. Like, what are we gonna do? Just go pack into some place, go down to Florida like that? Because that's, I don't know, maybe that's what people do. I guess that's what everybody talks about around us, like going to Florida for the week. But it's not my aspiration to go while everybody else is off. I'd rather just like, hey, if we lay low and then in the early May, something like that, when it's not that popular to go do something like that, we'll go and way less people, better pricing, things like that.
Yeah. Well, this has turned into a 20-minute therapy session for both of us talking about all of the hardships in our lives. I want to switch gears for a second and talk somewhat related about the idea of losing or failure. Obviously, we're dealing with losing in the market and watching prices go down and portfolio values go down. But I want to tie that to how do you think about teaching your kids a game? And I'll use an example. I've gotten my kids into chess and they love it, but I lose every single time to them, and they think I'm terrible because they beat me every time. And I want them to be engaged in the game. And if I played them for real, obviously they wouldn't have any fun and they would quit right away. So, where is the line between getting your children engaged in something and then at the same time you teach them about the idea of failure and how you can learn from mistakes and learn from losing? I haven't yet reached it there with chess, but I'm reaping the benefits of getting them engaged. They are obsessed right now, and I think it's great. So at some point, I will start to beat them, maybe in a decade or so, when the playing field is a little easier or more level, I should say. So, what do you think about that? And it's an impossible question to answer.
Yeah, I don't know, like I grew up, I feel like I grew up in this, we had a competitive household. I have two older brothers, one's a year older than me, one's 2 years older than me, and they're Irish twins. And I have a younger sister that's, tw 27 months younger than me. So we're all very close in age. So there's a lot of competition in the house. And so I think because we were all on a level playing field, there was always this aspiration to win, and especially because I was, the youngest boy, I was always trying to like, be the upset and take down your older brothers. But now that I'm on the parent side of the equation, I'm in the same boat, just trying to balance like you can't just win every time. You're going to learn nothing from losing and understanding that like that feeling of defeat and how it creates a little bit of a fire inside of you to not let that happen again. And I'm trying to always balance that with, but Ben, your kids are 5 and 4. Is this the right time to learn that lesson, or is it just a glimpse of that lesson that's important? And I think the more that I experience it, it's a more of the glimpse of the lesson that they need to experience. They don't need to experience like the hard loss. They do, however, need to experience when you didn't put in the time for something. For Avery, it's soccer. Like now she's playing soccer and she's not the best player on the field. And we have that discussion of like, but these boys and girls, because it's co-ed, they are practicing outside of just the Monday practice and the Saturday game. So it is an opportunity for us to reinforce some of that stuff. Okay, you see James is practicing hitting a baseball in the house. Not everybody loves the idea of it being in the house, but we play inside often, we play outside. Okay, it's an opportunity for Mary Kate and I to point at the reason that James is so consistent at baseball because he's always playing baseball. He's practicing throwing. He's practicing swinging the bat. That's what we're trying to reinforce. Is more of the effort versus the outcome, and that effort is going to translate to the outcome. But I don't think that that is the connection we need to like make sure that we solidify today. It's trying to like create the split between those two things and having them just start to understand the pieces of it. Like that's maybe how we've talked about it internally to our house of like, I still don't think we got the balance right, by the way, but that's at least our approach at this point.
There's got to be a happy medium. I think I don't know if anybody remembers, but the guy a few years ago became internet famous because he filmed his daughter trying to open the can with the can opener, and he refused to help her, and it took her like 3 hours, and she was sobbing, and that's not the way to
No,
experience failure.
no,
Also, doing everything for your children is also not the way, and so just like everything else in life, it's going to fall somewhere in the middle. And so what I've settled on, and let's use chess as an example, is when we're playing, I will give them opportunities to take my piece. And if they don't take it, whatever, I keep playing. If they're moving their piece into danger, I will say, "Are you sure you want to do that?" And then they'll say, "Why?" And, "Oh, because I can take your queen with the next move." "Oh, I don't want to do that." So I'm trying to incorporate some of that into the game. On the flip side, my father came over one day, played chess with one of my boys. I can't remember who. And he wiped the floor with my kid, and my kid started crying. Like, I'm like, "Dad, what are you doing?" He's like, "I was playing." I'm like, "Yeah, but you're you're obviously much better at this than he is." And so
that's right.
again, I don't think there is a perfect answer. I am a very stern believer, or a very strong believer in the gift of failure. There's a book called The Gift of Failure, and I
Yeah,
think most people can glean from the title what it's about. I don't want to eliminate failure from their lives. I want to help them through the failures. And when it comes to games, learning that there is a risk of failure with certain aspects of the game, but at the same time trying to balance a genuine interest in what they're doing, because otherwise they'll just give up and move on to something else and ask to watch TV. So I would
yeah.
say try to strike that balance where you're getting them interested and curious in something, at the same time slowly introducing times where you're winning or you're taking a piece of theirs that is a valuable piece, and you're explaining the reason why that happened.
I think that's part of like I mean, chess is such a good example because there's so many lessons within that game that with so many moving parts to that strategy, you have to be thinking ahead. And to ask a 6-year-old to think ahead to play his grandfather, like obviously we have way different playing fields that we're playing on. But I think it's just getting the mind firing within thinking about strategy and of course then the aspect of like, yeah, you can't lose. We did this thing yesterday. A buddy of mine who spends like a lot of time with us hanging out, my kids call him Uncle Killian. We're at the park. It was the four of us. We're playing this game. We're like on the jungle gym trying to like hit each other with the ball while like essentially like playing capture the flag. And we did let Avery win. And I was getting ready to say to Killian, like, the kids have been on the losing side of this for like a little while. We have to we're gonna lose them. And like him and I both got out, and Avery won. And that just like glimpse of joy on her face was, I want to I want to immediately play again. And what Killian said right after that, I like froze thinking about it. And he was just like, "Well, I think we got to ramp up the difficulty this time." And that's always what we're fighting is like, where on the spectrum do we sit? And yeah, it's like, all right, now we can't let you win the next time because we need to like go back and forth. But we played the game for like an hour and 20 minutes. And my takeaway from that is we got the balance somewhat right. If they were interested in some make-believe game that we just set up at the park on a jungle gym with 3 balls for an hour and 20 minutes, I think that's pretty good. They ran, they were being competitive, they were thinking about when to go down the slide and when to try to go to retrieve the ball. Like, I think it's that type of stuff. And it also, to your point, explaining, why that strategy didn't work, how to think ahead, working as a team. Like you're trying to teach all these lessons, but I think at the end of the day, it's like keeping them consistently involved in something is a good measuring tool, whether you're striking the right balance.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I will take that away as I've done the right thing so far because
Yeah.
they are obsessed with chess. I mean, our mutual friend Pat, my colleague, we play each other on our phones, and my 4-year-old will ask me if Pat has moved yet so that we can move together. And so if he takes his time to think about his move, I'll record a video of Michael saying, "Mr. Pat, please make your move so we can make ours." And I had our podcast, my corporate podcast, on in the car this morning, and Pat was talking, and Michael chimes in from the back. Is this the guy that does the chess? So I'm thrilled that my both my kids are very very into chess, and it makes me happy that it is anything but whatever mind numbing thing that kids can be into these days. And so I'll keep plugging along. Again, I don't have the official answer as far as how to do it and the right balance to strike, but if they stay interested, I think that I'm on the right path.
I think that has to be that's the only, I think, measurable outcome that you could point to say, I don't know another outcome that you could point to and just be like, not that you need to have like KPIs for this type of thing, but like I think trying to like analyze, are we doing this somewhat okay or right? And I think as parents, it's hard to find those moments of, are we doing this whole thing right? Are we doing any of this right? I don't we None of us want to raise, you know, jerks or ignorance in society. So we're trying to do the right things all the time, and having at least one data point to look at and say, look, they're still interested in this game that's not in front of a TV or on an iPad. I think that's a good way to measure it.
Well, I think that's a good spot for us to wrap up. And you're going to see, whether it's in markets or life or a simple board game, you're going to see losses, you're going to see ups and downs, and how we navigate that as professionals, how we navigate that as husbands and fathers is something that we are constantly striving. Ben, I know you and I are on the same page with this stuff. We're constantly striving to be the best version of ourselves, and we are human. We're going to make mistakes along the way, but just like we would teach our kids during the game, we learn from those mistakes, and how do we be better, and how do we just try to improve marginally for that next time.
Yeah, I'm with you.
All right, well, thanks for sticking around for this 30-minute discussion on everything, and we'll see you guys in a couple weeks.